So the guest we have today has embraced traditional education system, is also elevating hundreds of businessmen's world and lives. And on top of that, he is also a writer and he's writing a book which is releasing this January. Yes, you all are right. We are inviting Mr. Ray.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So welcome to our very expensive setup. How do you feel that two teenagers invited you as the guest on their very first podcast?
Honestly, honored. Honored to be here. Honored to share my wisdom, but also to explore, what the both of you have in terms of your knowledge and the inspiration that comes with regards to what you're doing right now. And I've always had this passion of empowering the next generation. So when the both of you approached me with this idea, in my mind, I was like, as long as I can make it work and as long as you guys are ready for it, I'm here for it. So it's definitely an honor and I'm excited to see what conversations we unfold.
So sweet of you. We're looking forward to learn a lot of things.
As you talked about exploring, so I think you are here in Dhamtari since a long time, for a few days, I guess. So what was your overall experience here in Dhamtari? And I'd also like to ask you to say something in Hindi so that our audience can also hear.
मेरा नाम रे है. मैं सिंगापुर से आया हूँ.
So basically, today we are here to talk about teenage productivity. So we are teenagers and we are somewhat figuring out in our lives what to do, what not to do. So we are going to talk about that. But before that, I want to tell you that we got to know that you got the purpose of your life when you moved to Australia with your sister. Before that, you were just like a normal teenager who isn't aware of his goals. So can you just tell your story from being a mischief teenager to a successful entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's so interesting because where I come from, Singapore, the education system that's been created is highly focused on meritocracy. So meritocracy means your worth is determined by the grades that you receive and achieve. And for me, for such a long time, my self-worth was very much attached to the grades that I was making in school. So for quite some time, when I first started in academics, right, I was consistently in the top 3 in class and so on and so forth until the age of 10, right? And then I dropped out of the best class simply because there was a point in time, I'm not sure what specifically transpired between my thought processes, but something happens whereby I just decided that all my grades just dropped and I dropped off the best class. And in that experience, and I guess in various ways, whenever you experience highs in life, the universe brings you to the other end of the spectrum to really experience a depth of embodiment and integration, right? So I guess that was what the universe was doing to me in order for me to find my purpose and my path. And once I dropped out of the best class, I was figuring out what my worth was because all of a sudden, I was no longer top 3 in class. So what does it mean about me? Am I good enough? Am I worthy to be in society? Do I belong here? Right? So that was the entire thought processes that was moving through my mind. And then I began to realize that for so long, I've just been focused on study. What if I just focus on socializing instead now? Right? So I swung the other end of the spectrum. I focused on enjoying time with my friends and so on and so forth. And that really created this entire spiral of discovering and figuring out who I was. And all I wanted to do was to go against the grain. So from the age of 11 all the way to the age of 18, my entire focus was on sports, dance, arts, play, joy. Studies was never on the front of my mind. In fact, every year, because every year you have to achieve a certain grade in order to move into the next year, I was always barely scraping, like the bare minimum you can achieve to get to the next grade, right? Because my entire focus was on, my parents are telling me exactly what to do, but I don't know why I'm doing what they're telling me to do. I'm figuring out the why. And this is the thing when it comes to teenagers, when your teachers and your parents don't give you a strong enough why, besides, oh, you need to do this because everyone else does this, in your mind, it doesn't make sense, right? And when it doesn't make sense, you try to forge a path that is only your own. So that was exactly what I did. But what ended up happening was this. So because my focus was on play and fun and joy, my final year exams to finish off college, in order for you to enter university, there's a examination in Singapore called the GCE, A levels, right, based on the Cambridge education system. And we need to achieve a certain grade in order to get into good universities and so forth. So my grades weren't good enough to enter into any local universities, full-time studies, and so on and so forth. And for me, I was given it was a bit of a blessing because I had 2 years of the military immediately after college to really figure out what I wanted to do. And in those 2 years, my sister graduated college and she was figuring out what she wanted to do for herself. And it turned out she wanted to engage and enlist into a module that wasn't offered in Singapore. And it was only offered overseas. And Australia became a destination and a country that became something that we wanted to explore. So because she wanted to go overseas, and since I couldn't get into any local universities in Singapore, my parents began to touch base with me and say, hey, since your sister is going overseas, why don't you follow her, right? And then you guys can stay together and we feel very comfortable and so on and so forth. So that was how I ended up in Australia. And that was when I found almost like the little sense of purpose from just wanting to play towards I want to make my parents proud because they're paying so much for me to be in Australia. Let me try what it feels like to actually be a part of the system, get good grades, get a good job, and so on and so forth. So when I entered Australia, that was my mindset. So it shifted from not caring about what other people were telling me towards because my parents were doing this for me, so I'm going to do this for them. But when you do that, you lose sense of yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This is what happens with like us. Yeah. It happens. Yeah.
Exactly. Like you're doing it because you want to make someone else proud. There is this energy of you're doing something, but actually you're putting yourself in a prison of someone else's expectations. Right? And then you begin to be like, I'm doing this not really for me. I'm doing this because I'm coming from a place of guilt. Right? I'm coming from a place of shame. I'm coming from a place of fear. And whenever we do things from that like lower density emotional spectrum, it always comes back to bite us in the back because of how we repress our love and our joy for ourselves. So when we repress that and we allow fear to be something that becomes our reality, guilt to be something that is our reality, then naturally, because we're doing out of fear, then unconsciously we will blame whatever externality or your parents for putting you in the position in the first place, but actually you chose it because of your need to prove to them. Right? So it's very counterintuitive, right? So for teenagers now, right, the most important thing is really being intentional with your actions and taking full responsibility of your actions. Because yes, and I get it, when it comes to your culture, it can be extremely pressurized from your parents, but true innovators never allow their current circumstances to stop them from achieving the results they want. I myself have to let go of the guilt that I felt towards my parents when I started my own business, right? Because I left the country, I didn't want to go back home until I made a name for myself. So I had to face that guilt of not being back home and helping my parents. But the thing is, I can't truly help them if I'm not helping myself first, right? If I help myself first and I make a lot of money, then guess what? And I have experienced a lot of success, not just money, like success, love, and joy in my life, then I naturally can give to them from a place of love, joy, and overflow instead of giving to them from a place of guilt, right? And that doesn't create unconditional giving. It creates like expectational giving. I give my parents from a place of guilt, and if they don't meet me in how I want the love from them, then I'm like, why am I doing so much for them, right? Whereas if you're doing so much for yourself and then you give them from the place of overflow, then it becomes like, doesn't matter how they respond, I'm just going to give, right? Whatever they say don't affect me, doesn't trigger my guilt because I really love my life. And that's where I'm at right now with my parents, right? No matter what they say, they're, oh, be safe, this is dangerous, this is that. I'm like, I hear you. I love my life. I'm going to give to you from that place. So it becomes a more conducive and cohesive relationship.
You also mentioned that you lost some amount of money in your business and it was very risky. Yeah. I would like to ask you, at that point of time, what did you feel when you saw the failure in front of your face and starting again everything? And it must be so, overwhelming. How did you face it?
Yeah, so to provide you with context, when I first started my business, I grew really quickly. I experienced success very, very quickly. And that also inflated my ego. right? They inflated my sense of status, what it means to be worthy in society, right? Especially coming from a background where I never felt successful. All of a sudden, I was making more money than any of my cohort mates, right? That gave me that inflated sense of like, oh, so what if you're good in school? Look at me now. No matter how not good I am at school, I'm still making a lot more money than you, right? It is that need to prove myself to others, the need to be seen, the need to be loved, the need to be accepted. I was coming from that place. So I began to attach. Now that I began to find my worth in how much money I was making, I began to attach my worth to how much money I was making. Right? So my worth was now still based upon an external metric. Yes, it's no longer about academic grades, but now it's still an external metric of money.
Yeah.
Right? And that was what I was entirely focusing on. So I experienced success really, really quickly. I scaled my first business to USD 220,000 a month. Right? It's a lot of money for a lot of people. Right? It's phenomenal. Right? But in that experience, with that inflated ego, I was burning a lot of people as well. I was making promises on the front end, but not fulfilling on the back end. So things like that, because of that chase, of the need to experience another figure, another zero in your income, it became this endless chase. Because even for me at that time, it's crazy thinking back to it now. I would receive bank notifications of bank transfers from clients. And 1 week, I'll receive notifications for 20,000 USD, 30,000 USD. And for me, it never felt enough. It never felt enough because I was attaching that self-worth to that. And the thing is, 220,000, 500,000, a million, there's always a figure more. It never ends, right? So if you attach your self-worth externally, it becomes this endless rat race, an endless hustle, an endless chase, right? So that was what happened with my first business. And I was with a business partner, and he was my first ever, one of my first mentors, right? And because of my rapid success, he decided to go into a business partnership with me. And I was 6 months new into this whole entrepreneurial freelance space. And this mentor who has built and sold businesses before wanted to go into a business partnership with me. I was like, why not? Let's do it, right? However, because of, if you understand this concept called inner child wound, right? Whereby for me, it was a father wound, whereby for me, I always had this need to prove myself to my father. And because of that, I unconsciously put my business partner, because he was at least 20 years older than me, around about, right? I unconsciously put him on the pedestal, and I unconsciously saw him as my pseudo father.
You wanted to prove yourself in front of him also.
Exactly. So because of the dynamic, right? A business partnership doesn't work in that dynamic, right? It becomes like this. And then I was giving myself because I was trying to prove my worth, but you need to be equal in the business partnership. So what ended up happening was everything that we did, I also naively trusted him with a lot of things. And it eventuated into, there was one instance where I began to realize, as I began to get more mature in business, I realized that, I'm actually generating around about 80 to 85% of the company revenue. So that doesn't feel fair when we're going 50-50. So I actually needed to create the courage to have a conversation with him and say, hey, we need to recalibrate. And we did it once. It worked out well, and then it dropped again, and we need to have another conversation. And the second time we had the conversation, it was around about our strengths and weaknesses, right? So it turned out that I'm really good at cash flow, making money. He is interested in investing. So I decided that, okay, I'll make the money, you invest, feels fair, let's go. And he began to connect with this Forex investment company, right? And we literally began to put our money in there. And because for the first 6 to 8 months, it was performing really, really well. So on every 100, the bare minimum investment is about 50,000, right? Every month, you will make around about 10% on that money. So think about it. You're making 5K a month passively, right? And for the first 6 months, the figures were all in sync, and we could withdraw anytime we want, right? So it became an amazing product. So I began to connect my clients, my contacts, and so on and so forth into the fund. And we accumulated around about USD $2 million. Yeah, of our client contacts, myself, and so on and so forth, including our own money, which is around about USD 120,000, right? We began to refer that in there. And some of our clients even refer their parents, their moms, their mothers, and so on and so forth into the fund. But what ended up happening was in 2022, everything crashed. Everything crashed. It turned out that Forex investment company was a scam. and we lost everything. So in that pit of it all, the issue that I had was the fact that my business partner wasn't as radically responsible as he needed to be with my clients, especially when he was the one front facing. But I also needed to take responsibility for naively trusting him and referring my friends and my people into that fund. And that was very confronting for me. From the heights of their business success and the ego and so on and so forth, all of a sudden, I'm now needing to look in the face of people that we trusted, have trusted us to put their money in there and go like, we're not getting your money back. Like every one of them. So relationships were burnt, bridges were burnt. And it was a very humbling experience for me to essentially take full ownership of everything, face a radical responsibility. And that was the moment where I ended the business partnership with him. And because that was in Australia, that also meant that I was choosing to also end my visa in Australia. So it was a very confronting decision. It was one that was literally extremely humbling and brought me back down to earth. And that was when I left Australia. And I went through the next 9 months really figuring out what to do with my life, right? Because once you've built a multiple, like 7-figure business, your blood, sweat, and tears, and then you lose everything, you're like, where do I go from here? You know? So the next 9 months was very spiritually awakening, very humbling. It connected me it really allowed me to let go of all of my ego, right? And also let go of all the borrowed beliefs and social conditioning of what it means to be successful, and began to connect not just with the mind, but really connecting with my heart. Yeah, like what do I really want? If I'm choosing integrity in every moment, every choice, what does that look like? Right? So that those 9 months really shifted me into a more elevated state of being and more aware of my actions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
A couple of questions. Yeah. So you mentioned that after like you were 10 years old and then you got some bad grades and then you just demoted to demoted to a lower class. Yeah. So you lost kind of self-worth of yourself. Like you were like maintaining your self-worth with the grades, but now your grades are down. So how did you cope up with it? Like we also have this thing in common. Like if we fail, if we'll fail to make this podcast or to edit this video, we'll feel like we can't edit any video. What we can do? Yeah. So it can like demote our self-worth. Yeah. So how to cope up with it? Like I feel every teenager nowadays is going through this situation. So what is the way? Is there any specific method?
Yeah. So I actually shared this during the workshop, right? And the focus is this, like so many of us when we experience failures, right? When we experience rejection, when we experience a situation where it wasn't ideal, right? We begin to kind of like self-defeat ourselves and go like, I'm not good enough, right? Like I'm being rejected, like the world hates me, and so on and so forth. And all of those expressions are literally simply a reflection of what you believe, that the belief is that you got nowhere. Despite all of your hard work, you got nowhere, right? Whereas every step you take actually took you somewhere, right? So every podcast failure, every podcast edit, right, that didn't go as well, it was still an experience that you received that got you to the next step, right? But most people don't even take that first step because of their fear of that nowhere, right? They don't realize that every step is somewhere, right? So if we really want to remove all of those self-defeating thoughts, right, and negative thought patterns, instead of focusing on the nowhere, focus on the somewhere. Focus on how did I create this? Focus on how did I make this mistake, right? Focus on how can I improve instead of dwelling in like, I should have done better. Things, if I do things differently, it would have been different. But the thing is, if you could never have done things differently, you know, if you really think about it, you couldn't. There's no way. You were operating from a place of whatever like unconscious mechanisms was commanding you or controlling you, as well as your conscious awareness of yourself at that moment in time. So in a way, like you couldn't have done things differently, but you can start doing things differently when you look at how you have created that specific situation. So instead of like letting other people's noises of like, oh, you're not good enough, you need to do better, like blah, 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 like drown out that noise. Always drown out the noise of others if you have not listened to yourself first, right? Because if you listen to others first, then where does yourself go? Nowhere, right? So before you listen to other people's opinions and expectations, listen to yourself first going, how did I create this situation? What steps have I taken that resulted in a situation that wasn't ideal? And then what steps can I take moving forward to change that situation? And then you listen to other people, but you don't just take them on, you bounce it against your own mirror of truth, right? And this is one thing that a lot of people have forgotten, that you actually know more than you think you know. You've just allowed your fear of other people's expectations dictate your actions for far too long. Too many of us have given away the responsibility, self-responsibility of ourselves to institutions, associations, authority figures, instead of listening to the clear voice within us that's already expressing the fundamental truth of what we need to do next. And then we let that fear stop us. So if we're able to be aware of those inflection points, those, that voice that is so true, and do it, then you will then receive the experiential data codes into your body in order for you to take the next step, right? And humanity needs that.
Actually, but I'd like to ask you this thing again. You mentioned that we, are particularly teenagers, we really hear a lot to people. Like, what matters to us is not our true selves, but what does the world asks us to do. And before starting the podcast, I still remember I and Aadi, we had this conversation, and we were so confused. Not about how we'll do a podcast, but about what will people think. And this has always been a part of every teenager's life. Not only teenagers, but every person out there in the world. Because we don't respect ourselves. And what do you think is the right way, or what do you think is a method or any step that we can start or that we can implement in our daily routines to start respecting ourselves and our decisions?
And just we can cut down the years when someone is talking negatively about us. Even before starting this podcast, we were like, people will comment on our friendship, people will think that we are wasting our time. So how can we just cut down our ears and just shut up? We are doing
a better thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right? So if someone else's projections or expectations affect you, it means there is something within you that's believing that to be true of you.
That's very true.
Right? If you allow someone else's expression or projection or opinions affect you, it only means that somewhere deep inside you, you believe that to be true of yourself. Right? A person's opinions will not affect you if you do not believe it to be true of yourself. Right? So, of course, when you first start, you're breaking away from conformity.
Yeah.
Right? And society's way of unity, it's not unity in diversity, it's unity through uniformity.
Yeah.
Right? But innovation never comes from conformity or uniformity. Right? Innovation only comes when someone has the courage to break away from the mold and say, I am myself humbly and truly, and I'm here to create amazing things in order to live a life fully expressed, true to myself. Right? And every single human, if you ask them truly, what do they really want in life? They would talk about, oh, I want to achieve my dreams. But your dreams are literally achieved when you stop dreaming about those dreams and you start living them. Then you're no longer dreaming, you are living. When we take on other people's perception of you being bad and you make it mean something about you, then you're taking on their distortions into your reality. Right? You're telling me this. Okay, I listen to you. I'm going to take your shit, for lack of a better word, as my own. Right? Yeah, you're literally like, I'm going to take your whatever going on in your life that created that projection, that created that hate. I'm going to also take it on and make it my life. This is what happens when you accept other people's rejection. When I first started in business, I started posting on social media. I received so many hate messages, right? How dare you do this? I will complain to someone to take down your business. I even received I received this email saying, if you don't pay us 10,000 USD in crypto, I will take down your business. I received messages like a lot of the time when I first started. If I had allowed that to stop me from keep going on, I wouldn't have experienced the success and be the person I am today. Right? So when you receive that from someone, hate, rejection, right? And you make it mean something about yourself, then don't look at them. Look at yourself first and go, how am I choosing to believe that about myself? You reclaim that power, right? Instead of giving that power away to that person, you reclaim it and go like, how am I choosing this to be my reality? Then you can shift it. Whenever you go into how did I create this? How did I choose this? Then you can shift it. If you go, he causes this to me, you can't really shift that. It's out of your control. But you go, how is it affecting me? How am I choosing to be affected by this? You reclaim your power and then you shift. Make sense?
So we are going to implement this thing in our podcast journey. So I know that we also will get hate comments or something like you guys are wasting time. So I wanted to say our viewers, we don't give a damn.
Beautiful.
So yeah, we have many questions for you. Would you like to go first?
Yeah.
Sure.
So I'll give you a short story time. Actually, what happened was I was earlier in hostel.
Yeah.
So being in hostel, I was given a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
But the problem was because there were a lot of opportunities running now and then, every backend, I had to do something or the other, and everyone around me had something or the other to do. I started feeling fear of missing out.
Oh.
FOMO. Yeah. So this is basically, I feel that every teenager believes to feel this either in a practical way of productivity or even if in a fun way, even in friendship groups.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with FOMO? Because this is really this really leads to psychological problems as well.
Of course. And I'll give you a very generic formula that you can use for any negative belief, not just FOMO, any fear they experience, fear of rejection, fear of missing out, fear of being yourself, fear of not being seen, like any fear. You can use this concept, right? Every fear has a root cause, right? But so many people focus on the symptoms, right? But the root cause of this is this. You need to understand, as humanity, we are social creatures, right? So that fear of missing out is naturally because of our need to belong, right? Our need to belong to a certain group of people, right? So when you understand that need to belong, right, it naturally creates a fear of missing out because you feel as though if you don't do this with someone, then you're no longer a part of that social group. Or for business opportunities, shiny objects, right? If you don't capitalize now, you will miss out on those opportunities, right? But that mode of thinking is from a place of scarcity. It's from that place of, I will never have enough friends. I will never have enough opportunities. I will never have enough, right? But we recognize that opportunities are abundant in itself. Friends are abundant in itself. Then the abundance never comes from quantity. It always comes from quality, right? Too many of us focus on quantity instead of quality. The friendships I have now, they are not significantly a lot of different people, but each friend that I choose to connect with, we get to have extremely deep conversations where we can share with each other our deepest shame, our deepest guilt, our deepest vulnerabilities without being judged, right? So when I talk about fear of missing out, you always have to understand, what do you truly want? Based upon that, and then if those activities enter into the field of what you truly want, do it with full presence if it enters into your field whereby it's like, I'm doing this only because of validation, that choosing that will only perpetuate the problem of trying to fill a void that you yourself are not filling. So it's best for you to not do it and look at how you are not loving yourself enough or not giving yourself enough that's creating this need to be a part of others, right? And then let go, so that you can be extremely present with the few things that you really love and really enjoy and become a master of it instead of a jack of all trades, right? And I gave this example to the parents during the parents' conference. And I'll ask you this. When you go to a doctor, there is a generalist and there's a specialist. Which one you pay more?
A specialist?
Yeah, of course.
Exactly. People pay for specialists, experts, right? So if you try to do everything all at once and you become a generalist, what ends up happening? Not only will your friendship groups be diluted, your opportunities will be diluted, your expertise will be diluted, right? Which means you'll never receive the full extent of your potential because of your need to be anything and everything all at once instead of just being you.
Yeah.
Make sense? So that is that. Always get clear on what do you truly want. Use that as the mirror, and FOMO is no longer going to be a thing, right? Because you realize that when you do the things you truly, truly love, you will never miss out. Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to ask that how can we figure out that what we truly want? Actually, what happens is at the same time, at the same date, we have like 3-4 opportunities. Somewhere there is debate, somewhere there's dance, or somewhere there's singing. And whenever we see all these things, we honestly want all these things. Like, I want to dance well, I want to sing well, or I want to debate with people like with full, fluency and everything. So how can we just neglect 2 things and, focus on one thing?
Yeah. So this is something that is so important because so many people have forgotten about this. It's connecting to your body. Yeah. It's connecting to your body because truth feels whole. Like your body receives like a full yes. Anything else doesn't feel that state of like presence, right? So when you have so many different things going on, instead of focusing on all 4 things at once, let's look at 2 things first, and then ask yourself this question. Which activity feels the most true for me? And I'll repeat the question. Which activity feels the most true to me? Not think, right? Your mind can be conditioned, right? But your spirit cannot, right? And that embodiment of feeling, right, is your truth. It's what your body needs to experience in order to receive the experiential data codes to transcend it, to move beyond it. But if you don't listen to it and you go to the one that your mind thinks but not your body feels or everything feels, then you need to go back. You always need to go back all the time. So instead of going all 4 first, let's go 2 first, right? And then keep cutting down, process of elimination. And then you choose that one to go full presence, full commitment, feel it. And maybe after a while, you're like, this doesn't feel as fulfilling anymore. Let me explore the next thing, right? Instead of like, I don't know what to do. And then paralysis analysis. And then like you waste time, procrastinate, and then time just disappears.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah.
You also mentioned this, that it's better to be master of one rather than being jack of all. But in today's world, I think it's really important to be jack of all and be the master of one. But if you had to choose one between jack of all and master of one, what would you choose?
I'll say this. If you have not experienced mastery, then focus on that first. Because from the moment we are born, we have been a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
So we have practiced a lot of that. But we have not practiced mastery, right? So when you go into school, how many subjects do you take? Multiple. Right? When you choose a stream, how many subjects do you take? Multiple. Right? So we're so good at being the jack of all trades, which is important because as humans, we are curious, we want to explore, we want to discover. So don't limit yourself, right? But there comes a point in time where you actually need to focus all of your energy into one skill, right? In order for that to be the first domino that opens up the pathways, right? For me, that was sales, right? Sales was the first skill in freelancing that I really integrated that opened up the doors to like a sales agency, digital marketing agency, now connecting and negotiating deals, right? And so on and so forth, right? So that opened up the doors, right? Especially in business when you're first starting, because you've never done this in your life, right? So if you try to do multiple things at once, your mind cannot even receive the information well enough to create the things that you actually want. So I say, if you have not actually dedicated time, energy, and effort into the mastery of one skill yet, do it first. And then you can go back to becoming jack of all trades. And think about this. When I first, I have multiple projects going on at once right now. When I first started, it wasn't like this, right? It was only because I got focused on sales and just go full sales agency, full digital marketing agency, that it grew to a certain depth where I now have the experience to take and manage my time well enough to go multiple different projects at once. However, think about this, right? This is how the universe works. It always goes both ways. Jack of all trades, master of one. Jack of all trades, master of one. Jack of all... it's never like one or the other. Certain phases, you need to focus on one. Certain phases, you focus on the other, right? But every single project that I do, it all serves towards the ultimate vision, one vision that I have to revolutionize the education system. Every project's feed towards that. So I've got jack of all trades, yes, different projects, but it's still one anchor and one focus, right? Then you're clearer. So you get rid of any unnecessary opportunities.
There's one sequence, first jack of all, then choose one, then master one. Then after that mastery, then again diversify your perspective. Jack of all, then choose one, then master that one thing. This life goes in a cycle.
Yeah, and then eventually you discover a purpose and a vision that becomes your North Star. And then all your projects that you do, then you use that as a mirror to go, if I do this, how does it fit into there? If I do this, how does it fit into there? But most people don't have that. So they do multiple different things at once and then they go oh, I've just wasted so much time. Well, I still have no idea what I'm doing.
So, being a teenager, I really want to know that how do I find purpose of my life? Because when I sit with myself, introspecting and thinking about what I did, what activities that truly feeded me, and what was something that really enhanced my growth, I really feel that I have a lot of things on plate. But I still cannot figure out that one thing which is my life centered around.
Right now, if I ask you this question, the first thing that comes up for you that feels the most true, just say it. What do you love doing?
See, I have I'm still getting a lot of answers to this, but that one thing is probably transforming the education.
There you have it. So see how the mind works?
Yeah.
The mind goes, it gives excuses first. I still have a lot of different things coming up, but the one thing is that. So the mind continuously tricks you into thinking that you do not know your truth because of how conditioned we are. But when I ask you that question and you hold that space for that truth, that intention for that truth, it will come out, right? And always know this. And this is something that you can utilize when you negotiate deals or you're in class or whatever. When people say something and then they say, but, everything before but is irrelevant. Right? But that's actually my real reason. All the time. Be aware of it. So for you, a lot of different things, but the one thing that keeps coming up.
Yeah.
So now you have your North Star, right? And know that that North Star will evolve, right? But until it does, it gets to be honored, right? So everything that you do now, right? When you're in class, when you're doing your academics, right? And you're doing the tests, think of why you're doing what you're doing and how it fits into that. So there's a stronger purpose. Make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned that people resist to do work because of fear. I would like to tell you my story, a small story it is. It's not a story, but yeah. I have some friends and most teenagers, they also have their dream life to live. And they also want to achieve greater heights in their life. And we as a friends have this ritual of evening bike rides where we go and discuss all our dreams, all our just true friendship. I'll tell you everything, you will tell me everything. So we discuss everything. And I feel now it's been 2 years that we discuss everything. But Unfortunately, none of us, I repeat, none of us has even taken the first step to fulfill that, dream of life. So I want to ask, what is that resistance? What is that got them resistant that is resisting us from taking the last, first step, even though we have motivation to work according to our dreams? So I wanted to ask that we as a teenager, what exercise or what method we can use to overcome this resistance?
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? And this is a very common thing in the industry as well. It's not just teenagers. I've seen a lot of people who and I would say specific category, and I'm overgeneralizing here, right? So there is because I work in the knowledge industry, so like coaches, mentors, facilitators, practitioners, guides. And every single time the spiritual thought leaders come together, they talk about changing the world. But then what's stopping them is the fear of money, right? So they go into I want to be spiritual, money is not a thing. And then they forget to realize that in order for you to truly change the world, you also need money, right? So they forget to integrate that part. So they become this conversation of, I want to change the world, I want to change the world, but then they forget to look at what they're resisting and what they're hating, which is, I reject money. So how can you change the world if you reject one part of the world, right? If you really want to change the world, you need to literally accept all parts of the world in order for change to happen. If you reject one part, then there is this huge shadow that you have no idea how to facilitate and how to navigate, right? So when you guys are having these conversations and your ideation, the two things that humanity have when it comes to their personality is they have a very addictive personality, right? Addiction creates routines, familiarities, and the second part is complacency, right? Complacency meaning comfort, right? So when you combine that, you go into a conversation. Sometimes the conversation feels amazing because you get to share all of yourself. The heart comes out and so on and so forth. So it becomes very addictive because you don't get that in any other aspect of your life besides those conversations. So you go into those conversations and then you unconsciously go into that conversation in order to fuel the addiction. So you come out of the conversation feeling as though you're all good and well. So you don't need to do anything anymore, right? So it creates this sense of complacency. Now, I find myself, I think I'm moving forward because I have shared with people, right? Instead of I'm moving forward because I've shared and I've done. People always like the doing part, right? Because the doing part is where all of the limitations start to come up. The fear, right? The guilt, the shadow, the shame, right? And that part, because of how much we've given our responsibility away, is why people don't face it, right? I want you to understand this. Fear comes when you take action. When you don't take action, you don't die. You don't change. And if nothing changes, nothing changes. So which means unconsciously, you know that you will not die today, right? But if you do something different, unconsciously, you're doing something different. So in your mind, it's like, oh, if you do something different, there is a higher possibility, even though it's illogical, that you might die, right? If you sit here every day, you will not die, right? But if you decide to step out, there is a chance that something might fall on your head or whatever, right? There's a little bit of a probability, but that change is what creates the change, right? So when you have that fear, and you share those ideas, sharing is amazing. Now you've got to keep each other accountable. Now you've got to go, cool, awesome, you've shared this. We'll come back and have this conversation in a week's time. What are your steps you're going to be taking this week? We'll come back. We'll also look at that.
Kind of creating accountability.
Correct. And not just sharing. Sharing is amazing. It's phenomenal. But without the accountability and going, nice, you're talking the talk. Now I want to see you walk the talk too. Right? Because talk is cheap. And most people's expression is based upon them expressing the idea of who they want to become instead of the truth of who they are now, which is literally the fear that's stopping them from taking their first step. But we can look at fear, right? Think about this. What we fear, we empower, right? Because if we fear something, it means that we believe that it exists, right? You don't fear anything if you don't believe that it doesn't exist. But because you fear something, you believe that it is a thing, and believing in something, I perceive believing in something as worshipping by a certain degree. If you believe something, you're kind of worshipping its existence to a certain degree. So if you have a fear and you believe that fear to be a thing, then really, to a certain depth, you're worshipping that fear.
So how can we stop that?
Yeah.
So stopping it, most people try to fight it, right? Most people try to repress it or avoid it, right? I'll give you an example. If I give you a mirror, right? And you wake up that day and you're feeling like sleepy or tired, and then your face is this like angry or grimace and like not nice looking face. You look at the mirror, the smart thing to do is go like, right? And that's it. And it's done. But in life, people are not very smart. They either punch the mirror, break it, take the mirror off the wall, throw it, or run away from the mirror altogether. So much effort instead of just shifting that, right? And this is the thing. When you have a fear, instead of going like, oh, like I need to fight that fear, I need to repress that fear, I don't want the fear to come in, look at that fear. Go, interesting. Every fear, every shame, every guilt that comes up is literally what you need to resolve for the next step to unravel towards joy. So when I experience fear, I love it. I look at it, I'm like, I see you. Interesting. Where's that fear coming from? I start writing it down. Oh, it's coming from maybe a past situation, a past belief or whatever. And I look at that fear. Cool, awesome. So this is coming up for me right now. How am I creating that fear? Oh, because this past situation. So if this past situation created that fear, what can I do differently in this current situation so that the past situation do not eventuate? And then I move forward and I resolve that fear, right? And every fear I resolve, I create more confidence, more focus, and then I do it. And when I do it, I realize that, oh, actually there's nothing to fear. It creates a deeper confirmation within myself that, oh, all I need to do now is to look at that fear, embrace it, accept it, move through it, and then release it. And it no longer needs to be. The word release. The word release, if you break it up, it actually means real ease. Right? So instead of repressing it, rejecting it, release it. Right? A prisoner who chains his slave is also chained to his slave.
Yeah. That's really very true. That's amazing.
Can you repeat what happened?
Prisoner who chains his slave is also chained to the slave.
Yeah.
Right? It is not fear that holds us prisoner. It is we who hold fear prisoner. Once we let go of that chain, we experience freedom. Right? So it's the same with fear. Instead of hanging on to it, look at it and go like, you can go now. Right? And then you experience freedom. But most people don't realize that. They hang on to that chain.
I feel life is pretty simple if we look at it, but we complicate it. Yeah, exactly. And summing up to whatever you said, I just like to sum it up so that I just know that I'm going in the right direction.
For sure.
So, firstly, if I face a fear, I'll analyze it, why that fear is coming, or what is the root cause.
It's less of an analysis. You don't really analyze a fear. You accept it.
Okay, so I'll accept it and I'll find the root cause. Why that fear? Why am I fearing from that particular fear? And then I'll start like working on it, or I'll face it, and then I'll release it by embracing it. Correct?
Yeah. So tuning different steps.
Exactly like we did before starting a podcast.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We don't have any gears. We were like, will our parents allow to work together? What will our friends say? So it is, we don't care. We don't care what the fear is. Like, we'll start and we'll see however it goes. Yeah.
Exactly.
But I also have one concern.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I accept that we took our first step.
Yeah.
But it's not always easy to take steps ahead. Like every first step is the ground level to another first step.
Right.
So how do you think, like, what is that one thing that we should inculcate in ourselves so that we can keep continuing to take the first step ahead? Like first step after the first step, after the first step, and then the chain goes like that.
All right, two things. The first thing is you need to understand this. What keeps our body alive is our heartbeat, right? Pum pum, pum pum, pum pum, pum pum. The universe, what keeps the universe moving and evolving is the universal life rhythm, the heartbeat. Pum pum, pum pum. And you know what that is? Expansion and contraction. Expansion, contraction. They're two sides of the same coin. You cannot experience expansion without contraction. Vice versa, right? But most people are so afraid of contraction, right? They experience contraction. They're like, oh no, the world is collapsing. Oh no, whatever I've done is irrelevant. Oh no, I'm back to nowhere, right? Instead of actually embracing the contraction in order to expand again, right? Because life happens. Life is not life. You don't grow linearly. It's like a spiral, right? You grow like that. So in order for a spiral to really happen, it's like expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction. But every expansion and contraction brings you to a higher state of being, right? So when you understand that, then when you're experiencing expansion, then you know that the next stage is contraction. So you can embrace it, right? And go like, I'm feeling this amazingness right now. I'm starting my first episode, right? And so on and so forth, right? Let me enjoy this process and expand with this process and so on and so forth. Instead of going like worrying about the future or like what's next or blah, blah, blah. Here, let's expand. And then naturally, once you have your first episode, the contraction comes into like, now how do I repurpose this? What do I do with this episode? Where do I take this and so on and so forth? If you know that's coming, then you can ask the right questions now, right? Like, and I'm here, right? And you guys are going to ask the right questions in order to support the contraction phase. To go into like, what do I need to lay in place in order for the next expansion to be even greater and deeper? And then vice versa and vice versa. So you understand that expansion and contraction are two sides of the same coin, and you don't reject any of it, you'll be able to embrace it even more. And naturally you go like, if I'm experiencing a state of contraction right now, whereby I'm not getting the results I'm looking for, whereby externally it seems as though I'm moving very slow, right? Take this time to reflect. Take this time to ask yourself different questions in order for the next stage of expansion to be even greater. Then that even asking yourself the next question or different questions is like the next step. And the next step. And the next step. And the next step. Right? Exactly. It literally goes on, right? So do not be afraid of failures. Failures are the most beautiful mirror, right? For you to receive the lessons that you've yet to integrate in order for the next step to be even more expansive.
Right. So basically the technique is listen to your inner voice. What is the next step that can lead me to my vision? Exactly. Just keep on working. And then do it. Yeah. Even if you're experiencing contraction or expansion, just keep on working.
Correct. Like success comes to those who have never given up.
Yeah.
Right? Like for me, I've been in business like I would say almost 5 years now, right? It hasn't been an easy journey, but it has been the most phenomenal, most expansive, most fun journey I've ever been on. And I never regret a second of it. The failures, the pain, right? And so on and so forth. Like never regret. Why? Because it's created the person I am to go, right? And all of us just requires that one point to experience success, right? But that one point comes with multiple different steps, multiple different failures before that eventuates. So even the visual, the diagram of like, I'm not sure if you guys have seen it, right? It's like the story of two gold miners mining, and one stops just before the goal while the other one continues on, right? This is success because I've mentioned as well, if the world keeps on evolving and you decide to stop, then you are regressing, you are going backwards, right? So keep going step by step by step by step by step.
Like it summarizes up to being better by 1% every day.
Exactly.
What we read in Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Exactly. Kaizen.
Yeah.
So I have one question.
Yes.
Like my father started doing business when he was 15.
Yeah.
And till date, I'm 19 now.
Yeah.
And I didn't earn even a single penny of my own.
Yeah.
Which just keeps my morale getting downwards.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask that, is it really important to start early in life? Or is it important like we can work start getting work, like we can start doing work after we are well versed in some specific topic.
Yeah, like early or late doesn't matter. Some of the richest people in the world, started off pretty late. It's all about intention again, the why, right? So if you're at this age, because like you can't compare yourself to anyone, like you can't compare yourself to your father or your mother or like any successful individual, because you can't compare your chapter 1 with the chapter 50, right? Like there is no point. It just defeats yourself even more, right? So it's about the intention now. Like I'm in my chapter 1. What story am I choosing to write? That's what you can control, right? So whether it's important or not, you have to decide, like, what do you want to do? And if you want to make money, how are you making that money? And from what you're making that money, that's it, right? Instead of focusing on, I need to make money or whatever, right? Focus on why and the what.
Like it's basically like living in present. What I can do today, what I can do now.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like forget anything, age, your time, your money, anything.
Right.
What I can do now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Past is done. The future is yet to come. There is only the here and now.
Yeah. We can only do something that is in present.
Exactly. And what you do now determines the future now moment, right? So you can't really control that.
You talked about future, so it really instigated a question. Do you really believe in manifestation? Like, have you been manifesting your life like this?
Yeah. So I will share some of manifestation. And people's perception of manifestation, it's you create a vision board, you every day you look at it, you keep thinking thoughts about it, like keep feeling your energy into it, maybe repetition, affirmations, blah, 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 to manifest your reality. That for me is the old way of manifesting. And why? Because whatever you're creating about the future is still based upon the thinking and the thought processes you have now. Right? So whatever you try to create and try to recreate and try to put affirmations, you don't naturally achieve that result. I know most people go, oh, I've written this in the past and then this is what they've achieved. But really, how they've achieved that is not through just writing. It's just through the doing, through the immersion of themselves in their lives. So true manifestation for me is this. I'm here, I'm now, I'm with you, right? How can I be so present in this situation that I'm choosing to be in order to receive the data codes and the lessons that comes from this situation, this experience, right? So I let go of all of the future things and the now things. I start thinking about I'm here now, right? How can I share whatever I'm sharing and create the impact I'm looking for in this now moment? How can I create content right now that supports me in this now moment instead of thinking about anything else, right? So for me, yes, manifestation is real. And true manifestation is actually fully immersing yourself in the here and now, fully immersing yourself in life itself, and not just creating a vision board and projecting that onto it, right? It's never about that. It's always about how can I fully immerse myself in the here and now, in the life that is now. Make sense?
Yeah. I have a question. Yeah. So I have started a lot of things. Like when I was a kid, I started doing skating. And after reaching national level competition, I just left it.
Yeah.
Then I started playing cricket, where my coach and my sports teacher was quite impressed with me. Like, you play really well. But with the advent of COVID-19, I just left it again. Then I started playing guitar. And I was very fearful of stage. But after performing guitar in front of the crowd in my school's annual function, I just left guitar. So I don't know what's the exact reason that I quit these things in my life, but I still figure out, was it the wrong people that I was working with, or was it the wrong environment I was working at? Because I can say that even before starting this podcast, I was like, after 45 days, I will go to Boston and we won't be able to meet. But she was like that, we can do online. Like, for my every excuse, she had an answer. So I figured out that I am working with the right person. and she will like definitely make me start a podcast. So was it like, when I look back, was it because of I work with the wrong people or in a wrong environment, something like that? Is it really important to choose right people?
Yeah, like choosing the right person to work with is extremely important. But choosing the right person to work with, start with choosing the right person to work with. You yourself first,
Yeah.
right? You can't really work with the right person if you're not choosing yourself first, right? So it's beautiful potentially how you guys can have come to a connection, to a collaboration. But it will come a time where whatever she's showing you, you need to integrate within yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So this is it. Every single time you left something, there is always a trigger that created a situation. Right? And sometimes the trigger is unconsciously manifested by us, potentially because of our fear of success, right? Because of our fear of being seen,
Yeah.
right? Or fear of being known, right? So unconsciously we create a situation whereby something happened externally that gave us the excuse we needed to stop doing it, right? So you need to look at all of those moments where you actually chose to stop doing it, where you chose to stop doing it. Yes, COVID-19 hit, but when COVID-19 is no longer a thing, right? Yes, like annual function after that is no longer a thing, but you chose it, right? So you need to look at the why behind the choice, right? So you stop looking at the environment and the people and look at yourself first in order for you to attract the right people and the right environment thereafter.
Like, so people and environment is just an excuse.
Correct.
I myself chose to quit that.
Exactly.
And I have to be answerable for that.
Correct. So people and environment will always be an excuse if you have not looked at yourself first.
Yeah.
If you have, then people and environment become a factor,
Yeah.
right? Become a factor that you can now consider, right? So no longer an excuse.
So I'm basically a factor for him.
Exactly.
I'm lucky.
Exactly.
So I'd like to ask you this question. You mentioned something like fear of success. So what is fear of success? Like I heard about fear of failure. What is fear of success?
Fear of success is I'm gonna give you an opportunity right now for you to speak in front of 500 business owners, right? For some people, they are like, oh, that seems too much, right? For some people, it's like, oh, that seems too overwhelming, right? Because when you are seen by everyone, it means that you need to be ready to share all of your shit,
Yeah.
right? And some people are not ready for that. To go like to bear themselves fully, vulnerably to anyone and everyone and share the deepest, darkest shames, guilt, secrets that they have never told anyone before. Because of that fear, it manifests as a fear of success because true success requires you to be fully seen, right? To go like, this is my shit. This is my shame. And love yourself anyway, right? So that is the fear of success, right? Because it creates a situation where you need to be extremely vulnerable, extremely truthful in order for true success to manifest, right? So that is a fear of vulnerability.
So concluding this podcast, I'd like to have a quick fun game with you.
All right, let's go.
So it's basically a rapid fire round wherein I'll ask you questions and you need to answer them as soon as possible.
Okay.
Very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you'll have to give only one advice, only one, what would it be?
Intellect, this quote from Rumi. Intellect is merely opinion, but bewilderment, curiosity is vision.
Yeah.
That's
One non-negotiable task from your routine.
One non-negotiable task from my routine. So I do this 5-minute self-reflection meditation before I go to bed every night, where I focus on 4 specific key areas. The first one is I reflect upon my day and I just give love and gratitude and joy to all of the moments that lit me up, right? So I experience full gratitude. The second is I feel into any dissonance, any aspects or events where I wasn't truthful or I was lying to myself or I was lying to others. I reflect upon how did I chose that. And then I think about how I can perform differently in order to resolve the dissonance. Third, I thank and I give love to my body. right? For allowing me to do the things I'm doing, to have 2 hands, 2 legs, able to see all of it. I give full thanks to my body. And then number 4, I give myself a prayer that connects me with my potential, right? So those are the 4 aspects before I just let go of my mind and I set the intention to surrender to the 4D dreamscape and receive whatever downloads that comes to me at night before I wake up. So that is a non-negotiable for me.
And what is your biggest regret?
My biggest regret. I don't have a biggest regret. That's the thing.
That's a very nice answer.
Every event and situation has created the person I am today. And because of the work I'm doing, educating, empowering, every life event serves as a story, as a mirror to impact and empower another. So I really do not have any regrets.
It's a very nice answer.
Yeah.
Spam of it.
Exactly. I love all parts of my life and every event that has made me who I am today.
That's very true.
What is your favorite thing about India?
Oh, the people.
And the aloo paratha.
The aloo paratha. The food. Phenomenal. A bit too spicy for me, but really, really delicious. But really the people, like how loving, how respectful, how values driven, like each and every single one of you are. And I feel so welcome, so loved here. Yeah, it's been a phenomenal experience and I feel so grateful for everything here.
This is a personal question. Who is your inspiration?
Who's my inspiration? It depends on I'd say the arena that I play in. My biggest inspiration, first and foremost, would be my father, because a lot of the values and the lessons that I received for me was through him and through the mirror that was him. So definitely my parents, my father, my mother, my family. The other inspiration, if in the philosophical front, a poet, Rumi.
She's a big fan of this.
The quote, intellect is merely opinion, but bewilderment is vision, is from Rumi. Like phenomenal poet, beautiful lessons there. So I would say those would be my primary like inspirations. That's it.
One thing that you are grateful for?
This life I get to live, this world I get to experience, the people I get to impact. Life.
Yeah.
That's really a deep answer. Like, I would never think of this answer as this. Like, I'm very grateful for my life. I'll go to a certain aspect of my life that, okay, I'm very grateful for this. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for everything. But I'll never consider my life to be a thing that I could be grateful for. But now I'll think it in this perspective as well.
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful.
So, thank you so much. You were the guest in our very first podcast. And I'm very sure that our viewers and we ourselves will be very benefited from this podcast. And we're looking forward to have you in our future episodes as well.
Thank you so much.
And all the best for your work. We are looking forward to read the first card. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you for being with us till here. We know that the video is pretty long, and for your reference, we are attaching a PDF which has all the implementable points and the summary of the podcast. Thank you so much.